Do you think you know what real shock is? What if I told you the rules of the game you're familiar with aren't just broken, but turned completely upside down? Imagine you're making the same mistake over and over, unaware that it's costing you not just time, but something far more valuable. Perhaps you've already experienced that feeling when everything goes wrong, when you hit a dead end, and there seems to be no way out. I've been there. I know what it's like when everything seems to be against you, but I found a way out. We've often talked about the importance of meeting expectations from the very first seconds. And today we'll continue that tradition. In this video, we'll reveal 3 completely unexpected tactics that will change your perception of air warfare. And here's the first one. Get ready to learn something that will make you desperately want to watch until the very end. You're making the same mistake in every battle, but you don't notice it, and it's leading to catastrophic consequences. Forget everything you've been taught about air combat. It's a lie. What you're about to hear will completely break your patterns and make your brain exclaim, "Why is that? Tell me more." Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. On March 15th, 1944, high above Brunswick, Germany, Captain James "Red" Holt sharply banked his P-47 Thunderbolt to the left, scanning the empty sky above the bomber stream. 800 B-17 flying fortresses droned on towards their targets, each carrying 10 young Americans and enough ordnance to level an entire city block. Somewhere in that vast gray expanse, German fighters were gathering. Holt could feel it. The statistics were grim. Since January, the 8th Air Force had lost 284 heavy bombers. That was 2,240 men who would never see home again. Escort fighters like Holt's 359th Fighter Squadron couldn't be everywhere at once. The Luftwaffe knew it. They had developed a deadly new tactic. Ignore the escorts, attack the stragglers. Damaged bombers, limping behind the formation, crippled birds with feathered props and smoking engines, easy prey. Yesterday, Holt had watched helplessly as 6 Focke-Wulf FW-190s attacked a damaged B-17 called Memphis Belle II. The bomber had lasted 43 seconds. Today's intelligence briefing reported the same pattern across 37 missions. German fighters deliberately attacked aircraft showing battle damage, avoiding intact ones, and refusing to engage escort fighters. The math was simple and brutal. When fighters escorted intact bombers, the Germans waited. When bombers showed damage, the Germans pounced, and they did it 3 miles from where the American escorts were flying. By the time Holt's squadron reached the attack site, it was all over. "We're not protecting the right planes," Holt muttered into his oxygen mask. What he didn't know, what no one in the 359th Fighter Squadron knew, was that in exactly 4 hours, a 24-year-old Brooklyn artist with no military aviation experience would sketch an idea on a napkin that would turn this deadly game on its head. An idea so simple, so audacious, that when he first presented it, the squadron commander would call it the stupidest thing I've ever heard. An idea involving paint, theater, and the oldest military trick in the book, making your strength look like weakness. Within 30 days, this controversial tactic would lure 40 German fighters into carefully orchestrated ambushes. It would save approximately 180 American bomber airmen. It would violate at least 3 articles of the Geneva Convention and remain classified for the next 47 years. This is the story of how one squadron started painting their planes to look damaged and turned the hunters into the hunted. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The crisis had begun long before March 1944. It originated with a German pilot named Hermann Josef Pips Priller, who, in December 1943, realized something the Allied command had yet to grasp. Damaged bombers were predictable. A healthy bomber fights, Priller wrote in his tactical doctrine, circulated within JG-26. A crippled bomber runs. It separates from the herd. Its escort cannot protect what it cannot reach. We do not hunt the strong, we cull the weak. The results were devastating. In January 1944 alone, 73% of bombers lost over Germany were stragglers, aircraft that had fallen behind the formation due to battle damage, mechanical failure, or wounded crew members. The Luftwaffe developed wolf pack tactics specifically designed to exploit this vulnerability. German fighters circled at a distance, watching, waiting for the telltale signs. A smoke trail, feathered propellers, an aircraft losing altitude. Then they struck. American Fighter Command tried everything. They assigned rescue fighters to escort damaged bombers home. The Germans simply waited for these escorts to run low on fuel and turn back. They increased fighter patrols around bomber routes. The Germans attacked in the gaps. They developed new radio protocols for damaged aircraft to call for help. The Germans jammed the frequencies. Major General William Kepner, commanding the 8th Fighter Command, held a crisis meeting on February 28, 1944. Gentlemen, we have a problem that cannot be solved by tactics alone. The enemy has turned our wounded into bait. Every crippled bomber becomes a death sentence for its crew and for the fighters we send to save it. Experts unanimously agreed that the solution lay in preventing damage in the first place. Better armor, tighter formations, more defensive firepower. But these were engineering solutions that would take months or years. Meanwhile, boys were dying every day. Squadron commanders tore their hair out. Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Dickman of the 359th Fighter Squadron threw his cap across the briefing room after losing 3 fighters attempting to defend a single damaged B-24. They're using our wounded as traps. We see a limping bomber, rush to help, and suddenly we're outnumbered 4-1, half out of fuel. It's brilliant. It's ruthless, and I don't know how to stop it. The consensus among tactical experts was clear. There was no counter to this strategy, except to abandon the stragglers. Several senior officers quietly suggested implementing a survival of the fittest policy. Damaged planes would be left to fend for themselves. The proposal reached General Dwight D. Eisenhower's desk. He wrote one word on it in red pencil: never. But noble sentiments don't save lives. The losses continued. By mid-March, bomber crews feared being damaged more than being shot down. At least if you're destroyed, it's quick. Getting damaged means a slow, 30-minute chase across hostile skies, while German fighters take turns picking pieces off your plane, and your friends die trying to reach you in time. The psychological toll was measurable. The number of aborted missions grew. Pilots reported seeing battle damage that repair crews couldn't find. Some crews requested transfers to the Pacific Theater, where at least the enemy fought fair. Into this desperate situation stepped Technical Sergeant Daniel Weiss, 24, a former commercial artist for the J. Walter Thompson Advertising Agency, now a crew chief for the 359th Fighter Squadron. Weiss had no combat experience. He had never flown a fighter. His job involved maintaining landing gear hydraulics and painting kill marks on fuselages. What he did have was a Cooper Union art degree, 3 years of creating deceptive advertising campaigns, and, critically, an outsider's perspective unburdened by the assumptions of career military men. On March 15th, he was in the officers' club sketching an idea on a cocktail napkin. Daniel Weiss never set out to change air warfare. He just wanted to stop seeing pilots return with that haunted look in their eyes. Have you ever felt your efforts were futile, with an adversary always one step ahead, seeing weakness where none exists? Does it feel like the world is against you, and every attempt to break through meets only resistance? What if I told you that the greatest victories aren't born from brute force, but from the subtle art of deception, from the ability to change an enemy's perception? This is the story of a man who learned to see the world not as it was, but as it could be in the eyes of others. Today we'll tell you how one man, against all rules, revolutionized the concept of warfare, using 3 principles you can apply in your own life to turn apparent disadvantages into undeniable strengths. Forget everything you've been told about direct confrontation. Our story will show that sometimes to win you have to pretend to lose. This isn't just a tactic. It's a philosophy that will make you rethink the very concept of struggle. Imagine a man born in bustling Brooklyn into an immigrant family that ran a kosher deli. From a young age, he drew on butcher paper, dreaming of a career as an artist. But the harsh reality of the Great Depression intervened, and he found himself at the J. Walter Thompson Advertising Agency, where his task was to create ads for Pond's Cold Cream and Lucky Strike cigarettes. His true gift lay in transforming the mundane, making things appear entirely different from their true nature, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary, making people see exactly what he wanted them to see. When the tragedy of Pearl Harbor erupted, Weiss tried to become a pilot, but failed the eye test due to mild colorblindness. An attempt to become a bombardier was also unsuccessful. Ultimately, he was assigned as a crew chief, which Weiss metaphorically compared to training as Rembrandt, and then being tasked with painting houses. However, his meticulousness and deep understanding of the differences between how things appear and how they truly are became his greatest assets. Within 6 months, he learned to read battle damage like an open book, recognizing every trace of flak on aluminum skin, analyzing clusters of bullet holes, and instantly determining which damage was fatal and which was merely a spectacular show. On the evening of March 15th, in the officers' club, where enlisted men were essentially barred, but an exception was made for him due to his popularity and ability to boost pilot morale, Weiss sat at a corner table. Captain Holt, already well into his cups, bitterly recounted a B-17 he hadn't been able to save. "They smell wounded planes," Holt said, "like sharks smell blood. How do you fight an enemy who won't engage unless they have the advantage?" Weiss listened absently, doodling on a napkin, a long-standing nervous habit. He drew a P-47 but added theatrical battle damage, smoky trails from the engine that didn't look quite real, and bullet holes that were too symmetrical. It was a caricature of damage, a sort of cartoon depiction. Suddenly, his pencil froze. He stared at the napkin, at the fake damage he had drawn. Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. What if we make them think they have the advantage," Weiss said softly. Holt didn't hear him. Weiss repeated louder, "Captain, what if we make them think they have the advantage right now?" Holt looked up, annoyed. "What in hell are you talking about, Sergeant?" Weiss slowly pushed the napkin across the table. "Your P-47 flying escort, but painted to look damaged. With theatrical smoke, not real, and painted bullet holes, stage wounds. It will fly as if hit, lagging behind, looking weak." Holt's eyes narrowed. "That's reverse camouflage, that's bait," Weiss continued. "And when they go after what they think is easy prey—" He quickly sketched 6 more P-47s diving from above. The trap snaps shut. A long silence hung in the air. "So, you want to turn escort fighters into decoys," Holt finally said. "I want to turn our strengths into their weaknesses," Weiss replied. "They hunt wounded animals. We'll give them a wounded animal with teeth." The next morning, Weiss was prepared for his idea to be ridiculed and for him to be thrown out of the briefing room. Instead, Lieutenant Colonel Dickman listened silently through his entire presentation. Then he uttered 6 words that changed everything. "Show me. You have 48 hours." Weiss immediately commandeered a section of Hangar 7 and 3 P-47s scheduled for routine maintenance. He assembled his team: Corporal Tommy Chen, a former Disney animator, Private First Class Marcus Wright, a theatrical makeup artist from Harlem, and Staff Sergeant Irene Kowalski of the Women's Army Corps, who had worked in her father's auto body shop in Detroit. What they created over the next 2 days was an astonishing blend of art, engineering, and theatrical magic. Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The first challenge proved incredibly difficult. Simply painted damage wouldn't fool anyone up close. Weiss needed 3-dimensional realism that would work at 500 yards. Wright suggested using sheets of cellulose acetate, a clear theatrical gel that was heat-formed and painted to mimic damaged aluminum, then attached with quick-release fasteners. At a distance, they were indistinguishable from real battle damage, and up close they could be removed in seconds. The second difficulty: smoke trails. Real engine damage typically produced thick black smoke. Weiss reverse-engineered German smoke generator systems from a captured Bf-109, creating a belly-mounted pod that could produce theatrical smoke on command, both white and black, controlled from the cockpit. This smoke might look wrong to an experienced mechanic, but it was perfect for a fighter pilot 3,000 yards away making an attack decision. The third, and perhaps most crucial task: selling the illusion through behavior. A damaged plane not only looks different, it flies differently. Weiss developed a detailed checklist for the performance: reduce speed by 40 mph each, gradually lose altitude, occasionally feather one propeller, fly with a slight wobble. Captain Holt honed this technique, mimicking the flight of a crippled aircraft while maintaining full combat readiness. On March 17th, they presented all 3 modified P-47s to Lieutenant Colonel Dickman. He slowly walked around them, examining every detail. He touched the fake damaged panels. He watched the smoke generators operate. He didn't say a word. Ultimately, this violates the laws of war: false flag operations, flying under false pretenses. "We're not changing our markings," Weiss interrupted, then remembered his place. "Sir, we are still clearly American aircraft. We are merely exaggerating our condition." "This completely contradicts doctrine," Dickman continued. "Fighters are offensive weapons, not bait." Sir, with all due respect, the Germans have turned our bombers into bait, Captain Holt said. We're simply reciprocating. Dickman fell silent again for a long moment. Then he turned to his operations officer. How long will it take to brief an entire squadron on these techniques? 48 hours, sir. Do it! But no one is to speak of this outside this hangar. Not to other squadrons, not to intelligence, not to God himself. If it works, we expand the program. If it fails, he looked at Weiss. The sergeant here will spend the rest of the war painting numbers on latrines. Weiss swallowed hard. Understood, sir. And one more thing, Dickman said. I want to fly lead on the first mission. Have you ever felt vulnerable like a crippled bird about to be pounced on by a predator? What if there was a way not just to survive, but to turn that vulnerability into a deadly trap for your pursuer? Forget everything you've been taught about camouflage tactics. Imagine that to win, you don't need to hide, but to pretend to be weak, to lure the enemy into a trap. This audacious idea was born deep within the 359th Fighter Squadron, unofficially dubbed the Crazy Deception Scheme. Today we'll tell you how this revolutionary tactic changed the course of aerial battles. And remember to not miss the continuation of this thrilling story and find out how it all ended. Be sure to stay with us until the end. Your like and subscription are the best thanks, and a comment with the name of your city or country will help us understand where you've joined our community from. Rumors spread faster than the tightest secrets. In just 72 hours, word of that crazy decoy scheme reached Colonel Zemka, commanding the 56th Fighter Group. He personally traveled to the 359th's base to see it for himself. Zemka watched a demonstration flight that could either be a stroke of genius or lead to a court-martial. 3 damaged P-47s simulating malfunction lumbered across the sky, trailing smoke and wobbling precariously. 8 more P-47s circled invisibly at 15,000 feet, awaiting their moment. The decoys worked flawlessly. Wounded birds, irresistible targets for any predator. After landing, Zemke immediately found Lieutenant Colonel Dickman. Is 8th Air Force Command aware of this? He asked. Not yet, sir, Dickman replied. They'd shut it down immediately. That's my conviction. Zemka, the most successful fighter commander in the European theater of operations, a man with 17. 75 confirmed victories, a legend who had rewritten tactical doctrine, pondered. His opinion carried weight, capable of both elevating and destroying careers. I want in, Zemke declared. This is either brilliant, or it's going to lead to a court-martial. Either way, I want my group involved before headquarters buries this idea. Stay with us and watch until the end so you don't miss a single detail of this amazing story. We'd be especially grateful for your like and subscription, and of course be sure to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. March 20th arrived, the day that would decide the fate of the entire project. Fighter Command dispatched Major General William Kepner and a team of 12 officers to evaluate the program before authorizing or prohibiting its use. They gathered in a crowded briefing room at Bodney. Present were squadron commanders, intelligence officers, Air Force legal staff, and one very nervous technical sergeant who was beginning to regret every life choice that had led him to that moment. Weiss presented the concept: simulated damage, theatrical smoke, flight characteristics, and ambush tactics. He used phrases like deceptive engagement protocol and asymmetrical response strategy because they sounded far more military than simply, we're going to trick them with paint and trap them. The lawyer immediately interrupted him. This constitutes perfidy under Article 23 of the Hague Convention. The use of false distress signals to lure the enemy is expressly forbidden. We're not using distress signals, Weiss countered. We're not flying a false flag. We're using camouflage, deceptive camouflage, but camouflage nonetheless. Camouflage makes you less visible. This makes you a liar. A storm erupted in the room. 16 officers spoke simultaneously, their voices rising. Some supported the idea, anything to stop the bloodshed. Others condemned it. We are not Nazis. We do not use deception. The debate fell along predictable lines. Combat officers wanted to try it. Staff officers wanted to bury it. General Kepner allowed them to argue for 3 minutes. Then he stood, and silence fell over the room. "Gentlemen, I have a question for the lawyer," he stated. "When the Germans developed tactics specifically targeting our damaged aircraft, did they violate any convention?" "No, sir. Targeting the wounded is unsportsmanlike, but not illegal. And when we paint our aircraft to resemble damaged ones, we are engaging in deception." "Sir, like any camouflage scheme in military history, this is different." Kepner's voice turned to ice. "Because it makes the enemy uncomfortable, not us. The Germans turned our wounded into death traps. They weaponized compassion. And you're telling me we can't respond because it's unsportsmanlike?" The lawyer had no answer. Kepner turned to Captain Holt. "You've flown this profile. Can you maintain combat effectiveness?" "Yes, sir. Full defensive capability. Full offensive capability. We're just playing a role." "Colonel Zemke, your assessment." Zemke stood. "Sir, this is the first truly innovative tactical development I've seen since arriving in this theater of operations. Fighter Command has been reacting for 18 months, responding to German innovations, adapting to German tactics. This is a proactive step. This will make them react to us. I recommend immediate authorization for limited trials." Kepner nodded slowly. "Limited trials, 3 missions. If losses exceed standard for escort missions, we cancel. If we don't achieve significantly better kill ratios, we cancel. If the Germans adapt and the advantage disappears, we cancel." He looked directly at Dickman. "But if this works, Colonel, I want every fighter group in the 8th Air Force trained in this protocol within 30 days. Silence filled the room. "One last thing," Kepner said, looking at Weiss. "Sergeant, are you the artist who designed this?" "Yes, sir." "Do you understand that if this fails, people will die because of your idea?" Weiss's voice was firm. "Sir, people are dying every day because we don't have ideas. I'd rather try something than try nothing." Kepner almost smiled. "Proceed." March 22, 1944, Mission 250. Target, the ball-bearing factories in Schweinfurt. The 359th Fighter Squadron scrambled 12 P-47 Thunderbolts. 4 of them were modified decoys. 8 were hunters. Captain Holt led the decoy flight. His P-47, painted with fake bullet holes along the fuselage and equipped with smoke generators, took up a position 2,000 yards behind the bomber stream. He slowed his speed to 180 miles per hour, dangerously slow for combat, but perfect for simulating battle damage. Holt activated the smoke generator. White vapor trailed from the engine compartment, visible for miles. At 24,000 feet, Lieutenant James Fisher circled with the Hunter flight, watching Holt's performance through binoculars. "He looks genuinely hit," Fisher radioed. "If I didn't know better, I'd be calling for rescue already." They didn't have to wait long. At 1347, German radar operators reported a damaged American fighter, lagging behind the formation and losing altitude. The report reached Jagdgeschwader 1. Hauptmann Heinz Bear, an ace with 179 confirmed kills, scrambled 6 Bf-109s. This was standard doctrine, easy prey, minimal risk, a boost to morale. Bear spotted Holt from 8 miles away. The smoking P-47 wobbled slightly, slowly descending towards the cloud cover. Textbook behavior of a crippled aircraft. Bear did not hesitate. He led his formation into attack, 6 fighters against 1 crippled American. At 12,000 feet, Holt continued his charade. He saw the German formation above and behind, maneuvering into a kill position. His right hand rested on the throttle. His left gripped the control stick. Every instinct screamed, "Break away, run, fight." Instead, he continued to play the role of a wounded bird, trusting the 8 P-47s he couldn't see, but who were watching everything. Have you ever wondered if the most dangerous weapon might not be steel or fire, but illusion itself? What if your brain, accustomed to trusting your eyes, can become the primary target? Today, we'll tell a story that will make you reconsider everything you thought was obvious. A story of how one audacious trick turned the tide of air warfare, transforming the prey into the predator in a matter of seconds. On that fateful day over Germany, a pilot, Hauptmann Bear, a Luftwaffe ace, was preparing for his 180th confirmed kill. His Bf-109 Dove closing the distance to 400 yards. Easy prey. Before him was a crippled P-47, spewing smoke, a plane destined to become another notch on his fuselage. Bear was already savoring the victory. But then, a short, decisive command crackled in Lieutenant Fisher's headphones. Now! And in that moment, the world turned upside down. Lieutenant Holt, pilot of the wounded P-47, slammed the throttle forward. The seemingly crippled fighter suddenly unleashed its full power. The smoke generator instantly cut out, and Holt was no longer wounded. He was a 2,500 horsepower fighter, streaking at 400 miles per hour and climbing rapidly. The fake damaged panels, carefully affixed to the fuselage, peeled away in the airstream. In 3 seconds, the prey became the predator. The German pilots had exactly 1 second to register what was happening before 8 P-47s, engines roaring at emergency power, burst from the sun at 450 miles per hour. Bear banked sharply right, but it was too late. Fisher's first burst hit the left wing of his Bf-109, tearing away the control surfaces. Bear was too experienced to die so easily. He managed to make a controlled crash landing in a field near Osnabrück. But his wingman, Lieutenant Werner Schmidt, was not so lucky. 2 P-47s attacked him simultaneously. His fighter disintegrated in midair. This ambush lasted only 90 seconds. When it was over, 4 German fighters were destroyed, 1 damaged, 1 pilot was killed, 3 were captured, 2 managed to escape. American losses, 0. Not a single bullet hole in any of the P-47s. To understand how this was possible, and what lessons we can learn from this incredible story, stay with us and watch until the end. We would be especially grateful for your like and subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Onboard camera footage was studied for hours by intelligence officers who simply couldn't believe what they saw. A crippled plane that wasn't crippled, an ambush in the open sky, Germans flying straight into a trap. They should have anticipated it, but they couldn't. Within 48 hours, Bear was interrogated by intelligence officers. His report was disseminated to all fighter groups in Germany. American fighters are now using deception tactics. Aircraft displaying battle damage may be fully combat-capable decoys for an ambush. Extreme caution is recommended when encountering seemingly damaged adversaries. But the warning came too late. This tactic was already spreading rapidly. Stay with us and watch until the end to learn how this audacious strategy changed the course of the war. We would be especially grateful for your like and subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. March 24th saw 3 deception operations over Bremen, which resulted in the destruction of 6 German fighters and 2 probable losses. The Americans, however, lost only 1 P-47 with minor damage from anti-aircraft fire. By March 27th, 2 similar escort missions for B-24 bombers heading to Mannheim resulted in the loss of 8 German fighters, with no American losses. On March 29th, a large-scale coordinated operation was conducted, involving 6 squadrons already trained in deception tactics. 12 decoy aircraft flew through the bomber stream. That day, the Luftwaffe lost 17 fighters, and American bomber losses were the lowest in 3 months. These figures simply became impossible to ignore. Before the implementation of decoy aircraft tactics, from January to March 15, 1944, average bomber losses per mission were 2%, and the fighter loss ratio was 1. 3.1 in favor of the Germans, German aircraft shot down versus American. The survival rate for stragglers barely reached 27%. After the deception tactics began, from March 22 to April 15, 1944, average bomber losses per mission dropped to 8%. The fighter loss ratio significantly improved, reaching 4. 7.1 in favor of the Americans, and the survival rate for stragglers increased to an impressive 73%. The 39th Fighter Squadron alone claimed 40 confirmed kills in 30 days, a figure typically achieved in 6 months. More importantly, bomber crews reported that German fighters began to hesitate, second-guess their decisions before attacking, and break off engagements that previously ended in aggressive pursuit. German pilot Lieutenant Klaus Hartmann, captured on April 3rd, stated during interrogation, "We can no longer trust our eyes. What appears weak can be strong. What looks wounded can be a trap. We are ordered to be aggressive. But how can we be aggressive when aggression leads to an ambush? They have turned our own tactics against us." The psychological impact was as significant as the tactical success. German fighters began to completely avoid aircraft that appeared damaged, which in turn meant that genuinely damaged bombers survived much more often. The Luftwaffe's Wolf Pack doctrine, so effective for 4 months, collapsed in just 3 weeks. By April 15th, every fighter group in the 8th Fighter Command had at least 1 squadron trained in decoy operations. This tactical innovation spread to the 9th Air Force, then to the Royal Air Force, and later to the Mediterranean Theater of Operations. Technical personnel became true masters at applying theatrical damage, which could be removed and reapplied between missions. Technical Sergeant Daniel Weiss oversaw a secret workshop in Hangar 7, where he trained crews in the art of deception, demonstrating how to make strength appear as weakness and proving that sometimes the best camouflage is not concealment, but a lie. The impact of this single innovation is estimated to have saved 180 bomber crew members in just 30 days. Final statistics, compiled after Victory in Europe Day, tell a story that tactical manuals would study for generations. Between March 22 and May 8, 1945, decoy-equipped squadrons achieved 247 confirmed kills with a 2.1 loss ratio in their favor, the highest of any tactical innovation in the European theater of operations. An estimated 890 bomber crew members survived missions in which, statistically, they should not have, and this was directly attributed to the reduction in German aggression caused by the deception tactics. However, human stories matter far more than dry statistics. Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Dickman, the very man who authorized the first trial, retired in 1963 as a brigadier general. In his unpublished memoirs he wrote, "For years we developed better armor, better weaponry, better engines, and a sergeant with an art background and a napkin surpassed it all with paint and psychology. The best weapon often turns out to be what the enemy least expects." Captain James Red Holt, pilot of the first decoy mission, subsequently flew 47 more such sorties. He survived the war with 12 confirmed kills and the Distinguished Flying Cross. In 1987, speaking at the Air Force Museum, he shared, "People ask if I was scared flying as a decoy, brother. Every mission was scary, but this one gave me control. I wasn't hoping the Germans would miss me. I was doing everything to make sure they saw me. There's power in that." Hub Zemke, the legendary commander who actively championed this tactic, called it the most innovative use of psychological warfare I witnessed in combat. His fighter groups adopted decoy tactics as standard operating procedure, spreading the technique throughout the 8th Air Force. Daniel Weiss, the Brooklyn artist turned tactical revolutionary, was awarded the Legion of Merit for exceptionally meritorious conduct in the performance of outstanding services. The citation for the award remained classified until 1991, describing his work only as the development of advanced camouflage techniques. He requested to be transferred back to his regular crew chief duties and declined promotion to officer rank 3 times. After the war, Weiss returned to the advertising business. He never publicly spoke about the decoy program. When a military historian tracked him down in 1989, Weiss gave a brief interview. "I just solved a visual problem. The Germans were looking for damaged planes. We showed them damaged planes. It wasn't genius. It was just understanding what people see versus what is actually there. Advertising taught me that you want people to see what you want them to see." What if we told you that true power sometimes hides behind a mask of vulnerability? What if what you've come to consider a weakness can actually become your most formidable weapon? Many of us face situations where it seems everything is going wrong when those around us only see our vulnerabilities, not our potential. But what if this apparent fragility is just part of a grand plan capable of turning the situation on its head? Today we will uncover an incredible story that proves sometimes to be truly strong, you need to appear weak. We will discuss a tactic that not only saved hundreds of lives in the crucible of World War II, but also forced the enemy to make fatal mistakes, altering their strategy without a single shot. This is not just a war story. It's a universal lesson about perception, deception, and how brilliant ideas are born where they are least expected. Prepare to learn how a simple, yet audacious idea overturned all conventional notions of combat and why this approach is relevant even today. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for your like and subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. This striking strategy, dubbed the false damage program, was developed thanks to the insight of one man, a commercial artist named Daniel Weiss. He proposed something that then seemed absurd. Instead of hiding planes or camouflaging them as perfect machines, they should be painted to look already damaged. His idea was that enemy fighters, spotting a crippled bomber lagging behind, would rush towards it, expecting easy prey, unaware that a meticulously planned ambush awaited them. When Daniel Weiss was asked if he was proud of his invention, his answer was deeply telling. "I am proud that we saved lives, but I am not proud that it was necessary. This unique program remained classified until 1991, but its lessons have not lost their relevance. Modern air forces worldwide still study this case as a prime example of an asymmetrical tactical response, using deception to alter an enemy's combat doctrine without needing to technologically surpass them. Recall how the Israeli Air Force employed similar ruses in 1973, or how the U.S. Navy used false ship silhouettes during the Persian Gulf War. But perhaps the most profound and human legacy of this program was not in military doctrines, but in a letter written in June 1945. Lieutenant Robert McIntyre, a B-17 bomber pilot, addressed it to Daniel Weiss. This letter, filled with heartfelt gratitude, reveals the true scale of Weiss's idea's impact on individual lives. Dear Sergeant Weiss, you don't know me, and I don't know you. But on April 7, 1944, my bomber came under flak fire over Magdeburg. We lost 2 engines and fell behind our formation. I called for fighter support, not expecting anyone to come. And yet, to our surprise, 3 P-47s appeared, painted to look as damaged as we were. The Germans approached, confident of an easy victory. But your fighters were waiting. They shot down 4 enemies before the rest fled. All 10 of my crew made it home that day, thanks to paint, thanks to deception, because someone realized that appearing weak when you are strong is sometimes the best way to be strong. My girl from Baltimore and I are getting married next month. We'll have children, and they'll have children of their own. And all of this was possible because you thought differently about camouflage. Perhaps we will never meet. But I wanted you to know, your idea didn't just save planes. It saved entire future lives. Thank you. Lieutenant Robert McIntyre, 381st Bomb Group. This story vividly illustrates a fundamental truth. Innovation in warfare rarely comes from those who are seemingly obligated to be innovators. They are born in the minds of outsiders, capable of looking at a problem from a completely different angle, unburdened by the weight of traditional notions and established methods. While experienced pilots saw only tactical limitations in aerial combat, commercial artist Daniel Weiss perceived the same situation as a problem of visual deception. His genius lay not in technical knowledge, but in unique perception. He understood that war is not only about what actually exists, but also about what the enemy believes. The Germans were convinced that damaged aircraft were vulnerable, and Weiss transformed this conviction into their Achilles heel. The lessons from this story extend far beyond World War II. In any conflict, whether it's military operations or business strategy, the side that controls perception ultimately controls the battlefield. The strongest position isn't always about overtly demonstrating undeniable power. Sometimes true strength lies in making your adversary believe in your weakness right up until the decisive moment you prove them wrong. 40 German fighter planes fell victim to painted damage and theatrical smoke in just a single month. They were defeated because they trusted their eyes, and someone ingeniously realized that belief itself could be weaponized. This wasn't merely a tactical innovation, it was a profound understanding of the very essence of conflict. The most dangerous enemy is always the one who is underestimated. And sometimes the most potent weapon turns out to be a simple sketch on a napkin, drawn by someone no one ever expected to change the world.